Okay, so let's rank Tarantino's films. To be honest, the reason why I did this is because we just kind of weird for me to have a channel where I talk about movies and not um, talk about which Tarantino movies I like the most. Like, this is kind of a basic question in film, I think. Um, Two things. First of all, my criteria for this is a combination of what films I think are the best objectively and my personal preference. Although my personal preference kind of wins out. There's one controversial ranking that I did that falls into that category, and I'm going to get to it when I get to it. But the second thing is that I'm including True Romance and From Dusk Till Dawn. These aren't technically Tarantino movies because Tarantino didn't direct them, but like I'm including them as Tarantino movies. And if you don't like that, fuck you. This isn't your ranking. This is my ranking. And if you haven't seen True Romance or From Dusk Till Dawn, you should. True Romance, the script was written by Tarantino. I'm pretty sure the script was also for Dusk Till Dawn was also written by Tarantino, and it's also starring Tarantino, or he might just have a story credit. But with that being said, let's get to these rankings. So tier four, I know it's weird like that. Like he has, you know, uh, 12 movies, and I'm doing four tiers, but who cares? It's called Let's Forget These Exist, and I really do kind of want to forget these exist. I don't even really consider these fully Tarantino movies. If I came over your house and you wanted to watch one of these movies, I would like really try to get out of watching one of these movies because they're really not that good. Um, Number 12, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Look, when I saw the movie, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fine. But like the problem with Tarantino and late Tarantino, um, and by the way, Tarantino acknowledges this, I think, to an extent, where Tarantino will talk about how he only wants to make 10 movies. So, he understands that directors get to a point in their career where they're just kind of self indulgent and they stop making interesting films. And I think that that's what happened with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's just kind of a self indulgent, not that interesting of a film. There's some good scenes. There's some interesting things that happen. There's the fight scene at the end, which is like fine. Is it a great fight scene? Like, are we comparing it to Kill Bill? Like, seriously, come on now. It's a movie. It's okay. It's a few hours where we're walking around Hollywood, and basically Tarantino wanted to make an ode to like the old Hollywood of his childhood, and that's fine. But like, you don't need to subject yourself to it more than once, in my opinion. Let's try to get through these as quick as possible because I hate talking badly about Tarantino. But like the Hateful Eight kind of falls in the same category for me. I mean, you kind of had the tension in the last act that lasted about like 30 minutes, but the first 2.5 hours is just boring as shit. I mean, it's just boring. Like let's not pretend that it's not boring. Like again, like I think that with people like Tarantino, we can just we feel the need to lie to ourselves sometimes, but like we don't have to do that. This movie's not good. I even saw the extended version. I don't know why he came up with an extended version that was already I don't know why he came up with an extended version of a movie that was already an hour too long. Finally, change this. Jackie Brown. This is a weird miss from Tarantino. Basically, like Tarantino growing up really enjoyed like the B movies of Hollywood, specifically like black exploitation films. And Pam Grier was a huge star at the time in the 1970s, and I'm pretty sure he grew up with. And so he just really wanted to make a movie with Pam Grier. I really think that's what it was. Again, this is a movie that's just like plotting, not that interesting for most of the movie, and then you kind of have a third act that is that has some tension in it, but doesn't really deliver what it needs to deliver, and it's just not really that great of a film. One thing I do want to say about like these three movies is that like I'm ranking them very low for Tarantino movies, but they're still good movies just because they are Tarantino movies. Like the worst Monet painting is still a Monet painting. It's still great. So I'm kind of shitting on these just to get through this in the ranking. But let's just move on. Let's not think about this too much. Tier three is fun but a little bit forgettable. Uh, Whereas I think the last three movies like he really tried to like make a statement and make like beautiful artistic art. These are movies where more often than not, I think there's one movie that doesn't fall in this category. It's it's a good hour and a half, 2 hour popcorn flick, but there's not too much more there. Um, Number nine, Death Proof. Death Proof is fun. I like Death Proof. Great movie. I'd love to watch it whenever. If anyone ever wants to watch Death Proof, I'm down. It's fun. It's great. But is it anything really that much more than that? Not really. So it's fine. And then I'm kind of putting From Dusk Till Dawn and True Romance in these categories. Again, both incredibly fun movies. I actually think that I'm kind of being a little bit unfair to True Romance. I think True Romance is a movie that kind of sticks with you, and it is like a really great film. But his other movies are just a lot better. I think that's kind of where we're landing with True Romance. Tier two, great but not great. You know. Number six, and we're really starting to get into like the best of Quentin Tarantino here. So it really is a lot of hard choices. But Kill Bill Volume 2, I would kind of put at the bottom of this list of like the good Tarantino movies. Mainly because she spends 20 minutes in the casket. There's the Chinese training scene, which is fun, but is it really like that amazing of a sequence? I'm not sure. You have the scene where yeah, and then you have like 20 minutes of her talking to Bill. I think that Kill Bill Volume 2 was a good movie. I think it was a great movie. If the two movies were put together, even them being 4 or 5 hours long, I think it'd be one of the best movies of all time. But I think of the two Kill Bill movies, Kill Bill Volume 2 is the lesser of the two, in my mind. Pretty definitively. Number 5, this is the controversial pick, Pulp Fiction, mainly because Pulp Fiction is on so many top 100 movie lists. AFI, which I think is kind of the definitive top 100 list, in my opinion. There's a lot of stuff on the AFI list that I disagree with, but I think it's directionally and generally correct. They put Pulp Fiction as 91 on their list, which I think is fair. It's a great film, changed cinema, yada yada yada. Also, a lot of really famous scenes. There's the McDonald's scene, there's the burger scene, there's the Royale with cheese scene, there's the scene with the heart attack, there's the scene with the wolf, all this great stuff. For me, I think that the reason why I'm kind of putting it as low as I do as number 5 is I think I just kind of watched it too many times, to be honest with you. If you've never seen Pulp Fiction and you see it, it's going to be amazing and mind-blowing and phenomenal. But if you've seen Pulp Fiction, in my opinion, if you've seen Pulp Fiction 4, 5, 6 times, by the 7th time you're kind of just okay, let me skip through this, okay, whatever. I do think that kind of happens with this movie. And the thing about Tarantino, I'm putting rewatchability very high as a criteria for Tarantino, and the reason being because he's such a great director that, any of his movies you want to be movies that you want to watch 100, 200, 300 times, and if a movie can only be watched 15 to 20 times, that's a ding against it, in my opinion. But Pulp Fiction is great. Also, I could make an argument that was it really as groundbreaking as it was, or did he just copy crib notes off of Jean-Luc Godard? I'm not gonna make that argument because it was a very difficult thing to bring to American audiences at the time, and he's also very open about the influences that he has from Jean-Luc Godard, so it's not like him stealing anything, right? Number 4, Django Unchained. And to be honest, Django Unchained is number 4 mainly because the other 3 movies I think are just just or just happen to be better. But if anyone wants to tell me, I mean, if someone were to tell me that Django Unchained is their favorite Tarantino movie, I would find that a little bit weird. But if someone were to tell me that Django Unchained is their second favorite Tarantino movie, that makes sense to me. You know, um, up until now, I don't think any movie I would respect if someone said it was their number two. I mean, if someone said, with obviously the exception of Pulp Fiction, right? So if someone said Pulp Fiction is their favorite Tarantino movie, you kind of know that there's not really that much more of a conversation you can have, but, you know, it's a respectable opinion. I respect that. Django Unchained, I don't think is a top one Tarantino movie, but it's definitely a top two Tarantino movie. Just the entire movie is a huge amount of fun. He obviously wanted to make a movie about a serious issue, you know, but just scene after scene, man, like, yeah, this movie's great. So that's my number four. Tier one for me are the GOATs. Kill Bill Volume 1 is my number three. This movie is, you know, unbelievable. Especially, like, you don't realize it. I don't think you realize it until you watch maybe the third time, just how much of the movie is that fight scene in Japan between her and that gang. It's like 30, 40 minutes long, and it's awesome. It is one, I think that Tarantino, when he was making that fight scene, went out to make one of the greatest fight scenes of all time, and I think he accomplished that. Like, I'll be hard pressed to come up with another fight scene in another movie that is better than this fight scene. Like, is there really anything you can think of off the top of your head that is better than that fight scene? Like, it's difficult, right? The one problem I have in the movie is, like, the hospital scene. I think takes a little bit long. I would have, you know, preferred he cut that by maybe like 5-10 minutes. But then you have, you know, the fight scene at the beginning with like Black Viper, and then, you know, you have you know, the rest of the movie just being fucking awesome. Great movie. Number two, I think I'm putting Reservoir Dogs a little bit high up here, and I'm admitting that. If you know, I think if I were to make a list based off of popular consensus, I would honestly keep most of the list as it is, but probably flip Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. But for me, Reservoir Dogs, I think, is one of the most rewatchable movies I've ever seen. I've seen the movie maybe 30, 40, 50 times, and I keep on wanting to rewatch it. It's just as good every single time you watch it. This movie is a timeless masterpiece, and the fact that he was able to do it with $600,000 is frankly, like, unbelievable. Yeah, it's just magnetic performances, incredible scene, especially like Michael Madsen with the ear, the Mexican standoff at the end. But then also just like the tip conversation, and then you also have the conversation about Madonna, right? Like, every single aspect of this, I think, is just a phenomenal movie. And then you also have, that 20 to 30 minute interlude in the middle where it's like, now let's learn about Mr. White, was it? I think. I haven't seen the movie in like a few months, so I'm forgetting who was exactly which color, but like, you get that background story as well. Just unbelievable movie. And then number one, I think it's clear, Inglourious Bastards. Sorry for misspelling it, but yeah, this movie I think is just perfect. I think if I were to make a top 100 movies of all time list, I would put Inglourious Bastards on that list, and I'll put it pretty goddamn high. I think that historically, in the context of like film history, it's probably going to be a movie that people are going to look down upon. I think Pulp Fiction, on any sort of like ranking of films list, I think Pulp Fiction is going to be a lot higher than Inglourious Bastards, just because of like, its contributions to cinema. But I think that Inglourious Bastards, like, every single frame of this movie is perfect. There's not a single second of this movie that I would cut. I would watch a super extended version of this movie. Like everything from like when he uh, the bear juice scene to the fighting in the basement scene to the you know um, you know Dominic speaks the third most Italian. I don't speak Italian. That's right, third most Italian. Right, like all of these scenes, and then obviously you have the incredible ending. Where it's just so cathartic to watch Hitler get shot in the head and all the Nazis burned to the ground. And then you just have this random Michael Fassbender and Mike Myers scene that is also incredible. Obviously, the beginning scene is fantastic. Um, the Lieutenant Aldo Rain speech is just one of the most historic. I think it's one of the coolest speeches in cinema history, if I'm going to be completely honest. Yeah, I just think this is a perfect movie. I think it's his best movie. And to be honest, like I think that you know, he was very clear in this movie that this was his best movie ever. You see it in the end scene where Brad Pitt says to B.J. Novak, I think that this is my masterpiece. He was talking about carving the swastika in his forehead, but I think it was clearly Tarantino talking about this movie in terms of his own pantheon of films. And I think it also kind of makes sense, if you just look at the arc of his films, where like after Inglourious Bastards, he makes Django Unchained, which again, great movie, but then that's when he starts making movies like The Hateful Eight and Once Upon a Time in the West, in Hollywood. I think that he kind of has the attitude after Inglourious Basterds of like, look, this is my masterpiece, this is my capstone. I've made the perfect movie. I'm not going to try to keep on making a movie as good as this. Instead, what I'm going to do is, make the type of movies that I want and start becoming self-indulgent, which I think is perfectly fine. Like, he has every prerogative to do that. I'll watch whatever movie that he puts out. Obviously, one of the greatest directors of all time, in my opinion. But it's clear that he thinks Inglourious Basterds is his capstone. I think Inglourious Basterds is his capstone. Every single moment. I mean, like, even looking back on it, like, if you were to like think about like what scenes like should you have cut, like you say, okay, maybe there's the basement scene. Maybe you can cut some moments out of that. But even that scene, like, what would you actually cut from that, right? Like, remember you have the whole like three whiskey scene. Like every single aspect of that movie, I think, is absolutely perfect. So, yeah. Let me know what your ranking of Tarantino's movies are in the comments, and like, comment, subscribe, and follow me on X. Thanks.